What's good, everybody? This is the Chicago. Oh, we have the second intro song today. What's good, everybody? It is a special, extra special, first time ever Chicago Sky, CHGO Sky Postgame Podcast. And while we wish the news was better, we're always glad to be with you. I am Chris Pennant here with Stephen Garner. As always, the show is presented by CD1 Price Cleaners. Check out chgo.cd1, that's chgo.cdone.com, and get a special coupon that you can use either for in-person or delivery pickup. As I said, I'm Chris. He's Stephen live and on deck in Indiana. I'm up here in Madison, Wisconsin. And Stephen, man, the Chicago Sky fall to the Indiana Fever 71-70, and that doesn't even tell half the story.
Yeah, it was, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was the basketball environment that was fostered here. I think there's multiple entities that are responsible for the draw that was brought to this particular game. There's multiple different plots and storylines that could be taken away from just things on the court and speaking to the basketball that was taking place, because there was high-level basketball being played from pretty much start to finish in this game. And I think it set a tone for something that could become, I'm not going to dub it a rivalry, because for me personally, it just takes a certain amount of postseason clashing of heads for it to actually be a rivalry. But I do think that there's something here in terms of these teams being in each other's way with consistency going forward, being on the same timeline and things of that nature.
Most definitely, man. When I was a young pup in this game, in the 2016 playoffs, I think it was, either 2015 or 16, the Sky faced the Indiana Fever, and I think what was the last iteration of the conference-specific playoffs, and they won game one in Indiana and then lost the next two in Chicago, if I remember correctly. And I asked Elena Delle Donne if, what this rivalry meant, if it was a rivalry in her eyes. And honestly, with the way that the Fever had been in the era of Tamika Catchings, it wasn't a rivalry, even though the Sky had gone to the finals, because the Fever had won theirs. They had their generational player who was established, going to be in the Hall of Fame. And Elena, to her credit, gave me a very good answer, talking about playing against Indiana, playing against Catch. But what we have the chance to see here is exactly what you said, a rivalry that stretches well into the future with the talent that we saw on display today on both sides for these teams.
Yeah, and I think obviously naturally a lot of things stem from these players, particularly obviously Angel Reese, Kamilla Cardoso, and Caitlin Clark, having the context of their collegiate clash in the heads that kind of transpires to the professional level. And while I understand that, there's, I don't know how many other players on both teams that just haven't had that type of animosity, if you will say, for each other in a competitive sense. So I just don't feel like me personally, Chris, I'm an athlete, all of that stuff. I just can't dub it a rivalry without there being some context of postseason clashing of the heads for it to, or even if the stakes are heightened in one team puts the other out like the last week of the regular season and takes their playoff spot. It has to be something meaningful like that for me to look at it from the lens of a quote-unquote rivalry. So I just refuse to use that word to speak to everything, but we can certainly mention that the level of competition is extremely high, and I think both teams feed off of that just because of the barometer that those three players are for their respective teams.
Yeah, and there's a chance for that tension and animosity that you talked about to be entrenched, because the Sky and the Fever play each other 3 more times this season. And there's a good chance with the way that the Fever have developed over the last 2 years and the Sky team, the way that they play defense, the way that they force teams to make games close, they both have the chance to be fighting for that last playoff spot, or maybe even pie in the sky, the 6th or 7th playoff spot once August rolls around. However, we're talking about today. And I do want to take time, because we've got our friends in the comments. Afternoon to everybody. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, of course, Region Rev, who was watching the game live as it went on. And we got a comment here from Teddy Serdick that I want to highlight. Our producer, Joey Spathis, is on the wheels of steel today. Joey, could you put that? Thank you. From Teddy, thanks for watching, Teddy, and listening. I've never seen a sport where vets are going so far out of their way to bury someone who is bringing in the kind of viewership they have never had before. Absolutely disgraceful and petty. And Stephen, if you'll allow me some space for this one, I just want to expound on it. Teddy, I understand where you're coming from. When you're talking about Caitlin Clark, it seems, I want to make that point. It seems like there are a lot of voices talking down on her talent. And I say seems because the voices who you should really listen to, this is something that I had the chance to learn in college in my communications courses. You have to be able to filter out noise. Every message has noise that distorts and blocks it. So you have to be able to filter out the noise. The noise is coming from the Charles Barkleys. The noise is coming from the Chris Broussards. The noise is coming from a lot of Johnny-come-latelys who have not had the chance or given themselves the chance to watch the WNBA or any women's professional basketball for any extended period of time until 2 months ago. And so the issue becomes is that it seems like veterans within the sport, players who have had 4 or 5 years of experience, and the game today where you saw the Kennedy Carter foul or the Angel Reese foul that was picked up on the replay, it looks like people are going, as you say, out of their way to bury Caitlin Clark. If this was any other player who had not had as much coverage, I believe, or this is a bit of a reach, but I think if this was a men's sport, people would be saying that is life in the WNBA, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball. This reminds me of when Bryce Harper came into MLB and pitchers were hitting him like day 1, day 5, day 10. Cole Hamels hit Bryce Harper with a pitch before in his first at bat when they were playing the Phillies. And everybody was just like, oh, well, that's the welcome to baseball kind of thing, man. So you cannot use that. I'm saying, Teddy, I see where you're coming from, but you have to look at this as an analogy. You have to be able to compare it to other leagues, other teams, and sports. Caitlin Clark should not be getting preferential treatment from her peers because they didn't get preferential treatment from their veterans and so on and so forth. It never works that way, and it makes players better. Sports is a crucible, and crucibles either what you're putting in melts away or it hardens like iron. And that's what you want from Caitlin Clark. You want the absolute best of her. And you can't get the absolute best of her if you don't make things difficult. As Diana Taurasi said, it's going to be a different world when you're out there playing against grown women who have played pro basketball for most of their lives. And she's just experiencing that. She scored 20 points in multiple games. She's had a 30-point game. And today she had 11, 8, and 6. So just because she got knocked to the floor a couple times, which I'm sure has happened to her before in college, does not make it a bad thing. And it's not a cheap shot. I see a comment in there. It's not a cheap shot. This is the way that these games go. If you like Bulls Heat in the early 2010s, you're going to like this. This is how it's supposed to go. And that's all I have to say about that.
Joey, can you bring that quote that's being spoken to back up one more time? I just want to make sure I'm going back to it accurately. Okay. I'm trying to be politically correct with my answer. This is not that. It's, first of all, it's basketball. And when you're a player the likes of Caitlin Clark, who's prolific in every sense of the word, the best way for teams to neutralize the freedom at which you're moving around the court with is to play with the requisite level of physicality. Now, sometimes that might not necessarily look how observers of the game might want it to look. Sometimes it might look like they might potentially want it to look. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a play where somebody was in jeopardy of getting hurt. She wasn't suspended in air and left with nothing to balance herself when she was going down to the floor. She wasn't being crashed into her landing space in terms of when she goes up for a three-point shot, which jeopardizes her lower leg mobility. There was nothing egregious about that, in that, especially to the extent that people on social media are speaking to this particular instance too. And quite frankly, it's soft. Like, I'm gonna just keep it a buck. I'm calling a spade a spade. Chris, you know I'm not the most blunt person. I usually am able to relate to people's perspectives. This is soft. This is just downright soft. I think the most recent, and I just like making these comparisons from one league to the next because it's certainly not one for one apples and oranges and all of that stuff. But the way that Steph Curry was guarded at the peak of his superpowers, and really even before the peak, even before the peak, you can go back to 2000 and like 2013. They're going up against the Denver Nuggets, or 2012, they're going against the Nuggets in the first round, and they go against the Spurs in the second round. Players that like the most close archetype player wise, they could be looked at through the same lens that Caitlin Clark is Steph Curry. Only reason I'm using him as an example. The best way that Steph has been neutralized is for teams to lean on him, for opponents to put pressure on him, and to just be as physical as you possibly can to the legal limit. Sometimes it's going to come at the expense of you taking a foul like Kamilla Carter did, not necessarily to send a message always, but just to make sure that they know that they're going to feel you, and that nothing that they like to do in terms of the space that they like to create and operate in is going to be easy to come by. And I just want to make sure that that context is being applied, because you can have your favorite players, you can have the people that you root for, all of that fun stuff is cool. At the end of the day, it's basketball. These players are trying to win games. They don't care about who it is that is in the jersey on another team. Their objective and what they're being paid to do is to go out and win the game by any means necessary, as long as it's in alignment with the letter of the law. Nothing egregious was done. It wasn't a dirty play. You could say it looks away. Okay, cool. But you also don't know if Caitlin did something earlier in the game or said something earlier in the game that adds to the context of the entire story that you're speaking to off of one particular moment. I just would like for the entire context to be applied, and for viewers of the game of basketball to stop being soft. Like that's really what it's at for me. And capital S with the soft, because you can't be this sensitive to so many different entities of things going on the court. It's war within those four lines. Like you gotta take the soft lens off. You gotta really enjoy the game, because this is just competition at its best.
Competition at its best. That's the best thing about it. That's the best thing about it. We lionize players who play hurt. We lionize players who play with an edge. And there was a comment in the chat that we had that there was it Brazil Populares that Clark had smoked with Carter on previous play. Carter just responded. Now, what I will say is we had Il Padrino, Kevin K. Duck, earlier on saying the foul really ended up hurting the Sky in a 1-point loss. That's true. Now, as we've said, I don't think that there was a cheap shot. I think there was a play, even the Angel Reese play, where Caitlin sold it just a bit more than there was actually there. But you don't want to have that foul, because with the rule set and away from the play foul, and with the Fever being in the bonus already, either way, a foul gives them foul shots. And as I said on our Sky Twitter account, free throws were going to loom large in a ticky-tack game like this. Caitlin Clark honestly could have put the game away at any given time. She had 3 or 4 open threes that rimmed out as she missed. And in the same scenario, the Sky had made it tough on themselves, which we'll talk about as we go further on, is they just couldn't get their offense going consistently until near the very end. And a lot of that was to do with one of the players that we've talked about, Kamilla Carter, who has just been, at times, the best player on the floor for the Sky, either throughout games and 5-minute stretches. She's been a boon, absolute boon to them. And that was on display early, that was on display late. Was something that, Stephen, you've been talking about, her ability to get downhill on dribble handoffs.
Yep, that's the thing that she brings to the team that's arguably as impactful as any other dynamic for a player that's extremely dynamic comprehensively. She is just a wrecking ball with getting downhill. She can get past anybody with her first step, and if you happen to get a beat on her first step, her handle is so sharp she could just counter you reacting to her first step, cross over to the other side, and before you know it, she's already blown the top off the point of attack, puts the defense in rotation, and she does that just on consistency, whether, like you talked about, off of handoffs, particular plays that they've gone to of late in small actions with her and Dana Evans, is Dana will just dribble at the defender that's guarding Kennedy as Kennedy's running towards Dana at the top of the key, and Kennedy takes the ball from Dana and is able to get downhill. And the important thing within that is the spacing for the Chicago Sky. And that strong side corner, they have Marina Mabrey, their best shooter, somebody that's not going to be helped off of, and somebody that, because she's not going to be helped off of, has gravity and allows for Kennedy to have even more space to operate in when getting downhill. And that's something that they spammed a handful of times over the last 3 games. I think it's something that they can continue to lean into, and they'll be able to get into counters as teams try to switch and adjust to it from there. But that's just a template and a microcosm of the overarching dynamic that Kennedy is. Everything she does is downhill first, second, and third. She knows no one can stay in front of her, and she knows she can garner the attention of other defenders just by way of that presence that she has. And that impact, especially for a team that struggles to generate three-point opportunities, is truly something that is invaluable for them, because it's something they're going to have to lean into more to ultimately get the shot profile that they need. And in this game, the Sky only took, I believe, 12 three-point attempts. Let me double check to be correct. Yes. They only took 12. They only took 12 three-point attempts, and they made 2 of those 12. And in contrast, looking at the Indiana Fever, they took 6 attempts, or they made 6 of their 25 attempts. So the Sky got doubled up, and not just attempts, but also makes. If you're just looking at it in a black and white sense, the math is not in their favor. And if you don't make up for that math by dictating from the free throw line, to which I believe they were outshot at the free throw line as well in this game by the Indiana Fever, which they were, 16 to 18. So 16 attempts to 18 attempts, and they only made 1 extra attempt. So they had 1 more point from the free throw line. So that impact wasn't there for them as well. When you start looking at the numbers at the three-point line and the way the math adds up and the momentum that comes with three-point shots and context over the course of games, you're working uphill, and it's going to get tough, especially when you have the flaws in the half court that the Chicago Sky do. So Kennedy is going to be important in everything that they're looking to establish going forward, cleaning up the shot profile, getting more free throw attempts, getting more just general paint touches within their offense. And the more she does that, I really do think she's going to be in the most improved player race by the end of this season. And if her numbers continue to ascend the way that they are and having these impactful moments like we saw tonight, she might potentially find herself in the 6th Player of the Year race at the end of the season as well.
Most definitely, and that would be great for Kennedy coming back from just really maturing as a player, and the way that she started the season. That's something I would absolutely love to see. We got a lot of people in the chat making themselves known, and we're going to come right back to you right after this break to talk about Coors Light. After a game like today, sometimes you need to chill, sometimes you need to chill out. And there's no better way to do that than with Coors Light, the #1 beverage of choice here on the CHGO Sky Podcast. We have the hot weather that's coming soon. When you have a hot rivalry, possible rivalry that's developing, you got to reach for that silver bullet. You know it's cold when the Rocky Mountains are blue. And as I always say, when LL Cool J jumps out and says to you, I need love and I need a girl, that's when you know the time is right to pop that top and settle back in with the coldest beverage this side of the Rocky Mountains. Always cold filtered, never frozen, always fresh. So as the time goes on, reach for it. Reach for an ice cold Coors Light. And if you go to www.instacart.com/CHGO Dunk, you can get a special presented to you by CHGO Sports. So, as I said, reach for that Coors Light all summer long. And always drink responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. We got a nice comment from Peter Will that I want to bring up if we can. I'm curious about how people feel about the choke move on Angel. I don't see WNBA vets just picking on any particular players, including other vets. After all, the referees who can call fouls suspend. That's a very nuanced and balanced point of view, and we need more people like you out there. If I'm remembering right, you're talking about the Alyssa Thomas play from the Connecticut Sun game, and I think that's just emblematic of what we were talking about. Angel said it best. They shouldn't give a damn I'm a rookie. They should make me play harder, play better. And I think that's something that we've seen from Angel, that she has been so good. 8 more offensive rebounds today. Got to the free throw line a handful of times, but still got shots blocked, had trouble getting her shot up around the rim. And of the one jump shot she took, she missed it short. So there's room to grow for Angel. We had another comment in there from David Bresson that I think is more pressing. Money needs to make some more threes and her free throws. And I'm glad that somebody said this, because the game was not lost with that Marina Mabrey missed free throw. The game was lost by what Steven said, generating outside shots. Of those 2 threes that the Sky made today, Marina took 6 and made 2. Nobody else got a 3-point shot down. Dana was especially off. I was wondering if the shooting background at Cambridge was affecting her shot because, we've seen Dana miss, but her shots were just well off today. And she couldn't really get on track from the outside. Plus, the Fever were either able to pack the paint with their bigs who were long and athletic, or run them off the 3-point line with Erica Wheeler, Christy Wallace at times. So the Sky need to find ways to get better open shots from out there. The second 3 that Marina hit was just a nice handoff from Elizabeth Williams, and then she set an up screen, and then Erica Wheeler got caught behind. If you can find ways to use Elizabeth Williams, use Izzy Harrison as handoff screeners, I think you can get a chance to get more shots. But the Sky also have to be more confident in taking that outside shot.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about in the episode for Wednesday, where Kamilla is a player that can certainly help to generate more of those attempts. She is a player that has a gravity about her. I talked about Marina Mabrey being the one consistent Chicago Sky player that is able to draw 2 to the ball. And the advantage that drawing 2 to the ball is for Marina on the perimeter is the same thing that advantage for Kamilla in drawing 2 to the ball from the post is. And it's just the difference is one is happening on the perimeter, the other is happening inside the arc. And the uniqueness of Kamilla is that when she's drawing 2 to the ball, the angle at which the defense has to defend from is a lot tougher and it's a lot more less natural than it is for trying to compensate for something happening above the arc. You're kind of distorting the defensive shell in a sense. You're putting compromise and putting stress on the responsibilities and rotation of the other 4 or the other 3 defenders around that. And in addition to that, if you nail your spacing in that, you can get into different types of looks without being redundant or without being archaic in the manners in which you're going about it in your process. And I think that's something that they're really going to have to start to nail over the next couple of weeks as Kamilla gets her feet wet in games in a regular season, going up against different styles of teams. They have to be better with their spacing around her touches to give her the space to then allow for her gravity to play the dynamic that it is and bring in extra attention. But they also have to do a better job of finding those pockets to get her the ball as well. There were multiple moments where you could see a player having the ball and really wanting to get the ball to Kamilla, and Kamilla has position and she has a hand free and she's waving it down like I'm open. But they just weren't successful in either finding the appropriate angle or just generally being able to get the ball to her. And that is something that is an advantage. She's a walking advantage in that regard. And it's something that they have to bake into their process. There shouldn't be many possessions when Camilla's on the floor where she doesn't either get a direct touch or that her gravity isn't playing into whatever bucket or attempting shot quality that's coming from the team in the half court. So they have to improve that process, and that's something I'd certainly be looking at going forward. But when she got the ball in her hands, you saw that there were positive things, whether she was catching it high and keeping it high, whether she was going after offensive rebounds and not being accounted for on the glass and then getting up, obviously finishes after that, or working her way to the free throw line and pick and roll. There's a lot of different ways she can go about having an impact on the game, and they have to consistently cycle through those things, most of which being with her directly getting a touch within those offensive possessions.
I agree. You have to get her at least one touch on every possession or have her involved in the offense as a screener, or as you say, somebody who can just cut through the lane, pull 2 with her, and then open up driving lanes. I mean, it's bread and butter basketball, and it sounds a lot more simple than it might look in practice. But when you say redundancy, as you said, the Sky can get stale. And when you have teams in a 12-team league who are going to play you 3-4 times a year, that's so much tape for them to watch and be able to counter and adjust to what you're doing. So the things that the Sky were having success with just a week ago, might not work in the next week. And that's the same even with Kamilla Cardoso on the floor. Now, granted, when you have somebody 6'7", you can game plan for them all day long. But unless you have somebody who can bang with them at that same or similar height or size, then you might just have to live with what happens. But teams can adjust their double teams, the direction the double teams are coming from. So the Sky players really have to adjust on getting through their offensive sets, I think, with more expedience. The issue that we used to have with the Sky was that they might make one pass too many because that ball was popping around in the half court so much when you had Candace Parker and Emma Meeseman for that 1 year operating in the high and the low post, there would be times where they would pass up what looked like a good shot for what seemed like a better shot. And you'd be watching the TV like, why didn't they just take 3 when they had the chance? Now what you're seeing is the Sky looking for passes or places that aren't there because their offense isn't in as much motion, or because they have so many slashers or players in the post that everything gets bogged down, either on one side or in one area. One thing that I think will help that is Izzy Harrison getting more time and being more healthy, because a lot of times when you see her catch the ball in the paint, her rhythm and timing is just off. She's still working with that leg injury. She's still got the brace on. And I think as she gets a little bit better, her jump shot's going to become more fluid, and her opportunities in the paint, whether a double comes or not, she's going to be able to feel that defender out.
Yep. And I think there's a perfect marriage in terms of a front court tandem to have.
Is there such thing as a perfect marriage?
In a basketball sense, there absolutely is.
That was rude. I'm sorry.
Now, just looking at Izzy, like you said, yes, she's still working back from her injury. You got to give her grace and time with that. Knee injuries in particular are no fun to work back from, yet alone return to gameplay and then get back to game speed with. So you want to make sure before anything, you salute Izzy for making that trip back through physical therapy, through trust, through working out, strengthening the muscles around it, et cetera, et cetera. Just to get back on the court is a win in and of itself. And then to be as mobile as she is at her foundation already, and she's still not close to 100% quite yet, this really speaks to the impact that she can have for this team. And I think, like I mentioned, opening up in this segment, she's the perfect piece to play next to Kamilla because she can space the floor. And if you decide to send double teams and the defense is rotating around that with Kamilla getting a touch in the paint or a touch inside the arc, Izzy's going to be able to space opposite side of her, and she can do things with the basketball. She can catch and shoot from the mid range. She can catch and shoot from the corners even more so. It's something that she's spoken to me, that stretching the floor and being able to knock down threes off the catch and shoot is something that she's worked extensively on the last season and a half now. And that's something that's going to be a weapon that optimizes everything that is Kamilla Cardoso. And also, like we talked about in the last segment, allow for them opportunities to have somebody else that is going to be able to seek out those 3-point opportunities and not hesitate when they get that catch, knowing that that shot is going to be so healthy for them, whether it goes in or not, just because of the quality of shot that it is. It's hard enough to generate open looks in the half court against a defense on consistency as is. So if you have pieces that are able to play two, you be getting those opportunities from deep. You have to take them when the opportunity comes, especially if it's not going to be at the premium that it is with other teams in the league for this guy. So seeing somebody like Izzy married with Kamilla Cardoso in the rotation is fun. And I think there's a lot of fun stuff that those two as a front court tandem will be able to get into defensively, which is something I wanted to speak to as well regarding Kamilla, because I think her offense is going to naturally get attention because of the piece that she's going to be to everything that they're going to look to do and process on that end. But on the other end is where she is really somebody that's going to be something that adds to everything that Elizabeth Williams, who should be on an all defensive team again this season, somebody I talked about extensively in a film session recently, she helps to add another punch to that. So you get a left hand punch from Elizabeth Williams in the starting lineup at the moment, and then Kamilla Cardoso checks in, and she's giving you another punch with the right hand and adding a little bit more physicality to it, adding a little bit more size to it. And it makes for a 40 minutes of hell, in a sense, for an opposing front court to deal with, because those two players are going to put pressure on you on defense. And Kamilla had plenty of back and forth with her South Carolina Gamecock former teammate, Aaliyah Boston, going at it in the post with each other. And I think the big thing that stands out to me consistently with Kamilla is her footwork. She's so fluid as an athlete with her feet, moving laterally, moving across great distances on the floor, being able to slide her feet and not foul. She doesn't have to compensate by reaching because she can move her feet so well. And she understands her size and the presence that it is. So hardly does she get in a situation where she's leaning over to try to help because she didn't do her work early. She's always in a position to be successful on defense because of how preemptive she is with the things she does, as well as her athletic abilities. And I think those are all things that are going to really help for the Sky to build their defensive process out. And she's going to be a key cog in all of that. And then the other big thing is we saw the trap and we saw the steal from Kennedy Carter in the fourth quarter. You don't get that steal without Kamilla being able to be an athlete and not just execute around the paint, but be able to take 5, 6, 7, 8 steps away from the paint, extending 3, 4 steps past the three-point line, and still being effective in space guarding somebody like Caitlin Clark. I know she wasn't guarding Caitlin one-on-one in that scenario. It was a double team with Marina Mabrey, but you can't get to the steal in addition to the rotation from Dana Evans without Kamilla being in the position that she's in and being able to impact the ball. I think the suddenness and the wrench that she's going to be as a chess piece and everything that Teresa Witherspoon looks to do on the defensive end is going to potentially outweigh the impact that she has on offense, especially early on.
That immediate double team in that moment when the game was about as on the line as it got, I'm glad you mentioned that because it struck me as well. Kamilla, 6'7" player going away from the paint to immediately double. And this is, somebody who everybody knows and everybody in the comments is talking about as a player with some of the best vision, I think, in the league. And I will say that. I think Caitlin Clark's vision is unquestionably elite. But they doubled, they got the ball, they got her trapped on the sideline, and kudos to Marina for playing very good defense today. And then Kennedy Carter was able to come from behind and get that steal. And that was a pivotal moment in the game when I think Aaliyah Boston had just gotten that and one to push it to a 4-point game. Kennedy Carter got it back to within 2. Mr. Spathis, let's pull up that Frank Armstrong quote right there because this is a good one. Caitlin Clark is a Gretzky in a league of goons. Carter and Reese, they're punks. Shout out to Frank. I appreciate a hockey fan coming in and watching basketball because I know that that's like a winter rivalry or just like beef that has gone back centuries. Hockey fans and basketball fans just for some reason don't get along like that. So it's good to see that some of those bridges are being crossed. I really do like that. I would like to respond, but Aiden kind of said it best in his response. But Gretzky was the best player in the league. Caitlin isn't Frank. That's very key. I want to go back to what we said before. All of this stuff is a crucible. It might seem like a cheap shot because you want your player to do it. And big ups to you having a favorite player already, even though you just started really watching with any real consistency. Because that's what keeps you coming back. That's what keeps you coming and watching games, especially now. It's not necessarily about teams. It's about individual players that people follow. But Caitlin Clark isn't going to get any better if people are approaching her with kid gloves. And what you saw today was not over the top. These are things that we have seen. I almost wish we could pull up that Asia Wilson block on Alicia Gray from last night and the afterwards, both of their quotes on Twitter. Because anybody who's coming in fresh with a specific point of view might say, oh, that was too much. That was out. That was uncalled for. There was too much body on that. Those are two players who went to college together. And everybody saw that, last year, Asia said, whenever I block Alicia Gray, that bad boy's going in the concession stand. And she did it a year later. And Alicia was like, man, well, she got me. Good game. And Asia was like, I wish we had won the game, though. That's what we're coming from. That's what we're going towards. That's what we're getting to. We're in an age of social media where everything can be analyzed and nitpicked and just dissected down to its most minute detail. But we have this era where players can interact in a certain way. And I think there's something that we're forgetting. That people might not even know about. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark don't have beef with each other. When Cheryl Swoops was excoriated for her comments on Caitlin Clark, and she also said the same thing about Angel Reese in a previous interview, there was a lot of vitriol from a lot of people towards Cheryl Swoops, who was a legend in the game of basketball. And Angel Reese was one of the people who got her and Caitlin together so they could iron all of that out. Angel has said it. I got no beef with Caitlin. Caitlin, I think, has said, I've got no beef with Angel. They're competitors. So let's just not mistake competition for real hate. That's the thing. If they don't have hate for each other, y'all shouldn't have hate for them.
And I think that's a perfect segue because I see people talking about players going and attacking Caitlin. That's just a wrong perspective. And by that same measure, looking at how people are trying to, people have been consistently trying to pin Caitlin and Angel against each other, and they both said like, no, there's nothing there. We're just competitors. She doesn't wear the same jersey as me. We both want the same thing, and we both can't have it without getting one of the others out the way. That's what breeds competition, and it's nothing more than just competition. It's for me, what's the most annoying is when things go off the court and people take things to extremes that they just don't need to go to, and it becomes non-basketball. And that's what these things just consistently go to. People are talking about, we saw a comment talking about people playing prison defense against Caitlin Clark when she's on the court. She's on the court. She's quite literally the player that's in the defensive game plan that's directly in their crosshairs. Do not let her be comfortable. Do not let her have fun. Take her away as much as you possibly can. That's a short-winded way of speaking about all of the different traps and pockets of the floor that they're trying to send her to not make her have fun. Like, things are gonna happen over the course of the game, but at the end of the day, it's just basketball. Like, can we just enjoy the game for what it is and stop trying to make these things become things that they're not? Like, I just don't understand where these things are coming from. Yeah, that's really all I got to speak on with that, and I hope that discourse cleans up. Like, I just really would like better for basketball discourse, because what's getting attention is not what should have been the plot of the game, which is all of the things that were happening on the court and just the great level of basketball and the environment of basketball that took place here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
And I think what's kind of sad is that we haven't seen anything about the fantastic game that Melissa Smith had, and that's something that the Sky really need to watch and tape, because she carved them up. Melissa Smith had a fantastic game. She had 2 for 4 from the outside, and she was really the catalyst. I think honestly, those Aaliyah Boston blocking Elizabeth Williams 3 times in the first quarter might have been the catalyst. But Melissa Smith was the best offensive player that Indiana had out there, and she made key bucket after key bucket. When it mattered late, the Sky had to come back from a deficit. And as we've talked about, their offense isn't necessarily conducive if they can't get into transition for coming back from deficits like that. And they've had a lot of times where they played from behind already in 7 games this season. And it's another something that they're going to have to figure out, how to make their offense more fluid, but either by generating transition opportunities in different ways or by just adjusting in their half-court set. We had our man Law on the quick draw say something very prescient, as you would expect. Should Kennedy have answered the questions in postgame? Is her refusing to answer making the whole thing worse?
I take that one because I was hearing personally.
Okay.
Nah, absolutely not. No, she should not have answered that question. That was bait that was being dangled in her face as if she didn't know what it was going to be flipped into on social media and national media pundits, all of that stuff. Best answer was no answer in this scenario. You could say that's not taking accountability. You could say that's ducking consequences for an action, whatever you might want to add that as. The best decision was to say nothing. And I was like, anybody else could say something. I was here in the room, and the way that it was even set up, it just wasn't it. The energy exchange from the question that was being posed to Kennedy wasn't there. And she did the right job having the composure to not answer that question. And shout out also to Teresa Weatherspoon for shooting it down after she initially said she's not going to answer Caitlin Clark questions. And for that particular reporter to keep pressing the same issue, doubling down and then tripling down to the extent that where Teresa Weatherspoon, who usually sits quiet during the player portion of question and answer sessions, to step in and say like, no, she said that's enough. We're not answering that particular question and moving forward. She did the right thing. And me personally, I just don't like that she was put in that position and that the head coach had to step in, because that sets a terrible tone for all the questions to come the rest of the press conference. And because you selfishly went to that, knowing that they weren't going to answer that question, that messed up the entire vibe of the entire media session that we just had post game. And again, this is not fair to everybody else, because now who probably could have got a decent quote out of a question they asked that wasn't coming from a specific lens and that it wasn't trying to be tweaked and to flip the script and do things to people, you're not even gonna get that quote because the energy that was set from the inception point of everything. So that just wasn't fair to Kennedy. It wasn't fair to everybody else in the room. And she made the absolute 100% right decision. I don't care what anybody else had to say or what they think. I was literally in the room, and you can't tell me what everybody else didn't feel because you weren't here. And that's pretty much that on that. I'm curious what your perspective on that is, Chris, but there's just no way that she was supposed to answer that question. Absolutely not.
I was just going to ask, do you remember, like, if not verbatim, like what the question was?
It was asking about what went into the whole thing with Kaylin, and then it doubled down with, well, did she say something to you? And Kennedy just kept the same composure. She didn't give it any energy. She's like, no, I'm not answering any questions about Kaylin or that situation. Next question. And then they got double down, and then they got triple down, trying to get something out of nothing that's not there. And Kennedy proceeded to keep her composure, did a great job, and proceeded to allow for somebody else to ask a question. And it really, like I said, because it happened so early on, it really set a tone for everything that was to come after that question-wise, and it just wasn't fair to everybody else going on in there.
No, that's true. When you get that, you already have a team coming in after a difficult loss, and so you have to understand that they're humans and they're going to be feeling that. And when a question comes up like that, I mean, I can't think of maybe Marcus Peters who would actually answer that question, but who have we seen over the last 10 years who's been, revealed or reviled for the way they operate in press conferences? Guys like Marshawn Lynch, players even like veterans like Candace Parker, who would not always – they have a respect for what goes on inside the lines. I think there's some things that players just leave unsaid. And I'm coming from a perspective that's even different than Steven's. I didn't play any organized competitive sports outside of bowling in high school. And so I've always come from this as an observer more so. And athletes, a lot of times they like to keep those things inside the lines because that's where they want to have it end. And in the media, the ecosystem that we're in, where there's so much that can be parsed and parsed and parsed again on social media, newspapers and outlets have to sell. They want to get those quotes, and if the quote is spicier, so be it. And it's an easy time. I think this is the thing for me. It's an easy time following a game like that for an athlete who, as much as we talk about Kamilla Cardoso, she still is somebody who I think runs 10 degrees above average, that she might say something that would be just like posted everywhere. And Teresa Weatherspoon knows that as well. And so I think that, what you want to say that she was covering for her or not, what coach would you expect to put their player out on Front Street? That's not a good coach. That's not a good leader to have your back. I like what Teresa does, where she has the two players come in and then she'll sit between them, but just let them speak. It's a very symbolic way of having your team's back, especially in the first season where you're coaching. This is your first time in the head spot. And the players have all said that they love Teresa Weatherspoon. And I think that's one of the good reasons why. Can we lighten the mood real quick? Erica came in and asked Steven, why are you in a closet? That's wrong.
Erica in the locker room, not a closet. First of all, but to kind of go back to the immediate question and all of that, I desire so much better for just us and the way we cover this wonderful league. I'm just kindly almost beg that we not we in a general sense, but we as an entity of the W, stop asking players these questions that are singling out Kaylin, and because they don't like these questions and they know what's trying to be spun or what kind of quotes are trying to be had. These things are not fair to these players. They deserve so much more. There's a lot of great players in the league, and to think that things are going to be different just because of one particular player is just not fair to the greatness that exists from coast to coast across the entire league. Like this league, like newsflash for the people that are brand new to the W, this league existed for 27 years before Caitlin Clark, and there's a lineage of greatness from different colors, different creeds, different walks of life, different religions. You can go down all of the political rabbit holes that you want to go down. There's a ton of legendary players that took place before Caitlin, and things are going to continue to rock with her. She's certainly added to the pot, and she's really helped the league ascend in the direction that they need to. But you just have to, like, as media members, we just have to be better with how we're asking these players questions, because it's just not it. That's my short-winded way of just asking for us to do better and be better. Like, these things that we have an opportunity to speak to with these players across these different mediums are blessings and privileges. Let's not take those things for granted and do these things to play to social media. Make sure we're doing these things in earnest and doing these things with the right energy behind it, please. I'm just begging for that. And that's really all I got on that one, because I heard some things and I've seen some things from, I mean, you can look at, I'm not going to name any specific moments, but you can look at Caitlin's initial press conference. We've seen things and sprinkled in from there, whether she's in the room or not. They're just not acceptable by professional standpoints. We just have to be better. Stop putting these players in situations that make them uncomfortable because they don't want to, say something that that they know you're going to spin. Let's just be better at doing our job. That's what I just genuinely desire. It's entirely too much great basketball going on the court to analyze and to speak to, rather than going to these great extremes to create something out of nothing.
Women's basketball did not start the moment Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA. That's just the simplest way of putting it. And I was talking to one of my coworkers over at the Chicago Union. Shout out the Ultimate Frisbee team, Kaylee Kowalski. And she had seen, I think, something online where Caitlin was eating breakfast, and there was just a line of people coming up to her for autographs because somebody had put out, "Hey, Caitlin Clark is eating breakfast here," and so people were hounding her for autographs, presumably while she had a fork in her hand, and you could tell she was looking uncomfortable and just wanted to eat. And there's a comment that we had in here that was very prescient. When all of these things come up, that's from Erica. When the single Caitlin Clark out, it alienates her and sets both parties up for failure. And that's the thing. I might not be a Caitlin Clark fan necessarily, but she is a great player. I want to see her do well. I want to see just about everybody in this league succeed. Alyssa Thomas has been the bane of my existence as a Sky fan. Same with Asia Wilson. But I want to see both of them do well because they're ball players and they put this league on the map. There are plenty of people at UConn who didn't like Candace Parker, Minnesota Lynx fans who had to deal with it for years. Same as Sparks fans and Maya Moore. But those are the ball players who set this league up for success. And you got to, even if you don't like them between the lines, you have to at least respect them. And I respect Caitlin's game. And so that's what I think is trouble. When you put this person on such a high pedestal, this early on especially, it makes them a target. You are making them a target that they aren't and don't necessarily want to be. And so, yeah, we got somebody said, stop bringing up Caitlin. I was that might be the last thing we have on Caitlin, at least for today, until the Sky play the Fever again.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect segue from that. I was looking at the Chicago Sky. We talked about Kennedy Carter to open. I want to mention that she had 19 points on 12 shots. I think this is maybe her second or third game where she's had double digits off the bench this season in this early portion already. She was +6, which was only second to Kamilla Cardoso, who also came off the bench with her today. It was +11 for the team. And there was a lineups with those two in particular that really popped for me. And just watching the game and live, I can't wait to watch it back and just kind of dive into the weeds on what all was going on from a more specific lens. But looking at that particular tandem of players, I talked about Kennedy being a player that she could potentially be in the most improved as well as the 6th player of the year categories at the end of the season. The spark that she is to this team, it's just you can't put enough of a value on that. And I mean, today was a perfect example. The team is operating without their starting small forward and Diamond DeShields. But Kayla Onyenwere has some issues on both ends of the floor and isn't able to play the minute total that they desire for her to play. And Kennedy's able to step in and she infuses the team with a different pace that helps to unlock the game, helps to kind of let them play more liberated, a little bit more freely. and also comes up with timely play after timely play. Talked about the she got to get behind the 3-point line on the opportunity that was created from Dana Evans in the fourth quarter early. But after that, you look at the cut that she had as somebody got double teamed on the block and it kind of pinged around the horn. She made a cut from the second. Oh, it was Marina Mabrey. They were trying to get some Marina Mabrey post touch. They ended up kicking it to the second side. She makes a 45 cut, gets the pass from Marina, I believe, and then she's able to pass it over the shoulder to Kamilla. Yeah, but without the cut from Kennedy from the second side, that opportunity is not created because of the way the defense is shifted. So her understanding of gaps, she was a player that was double teamed off of from the second side. So she follows the person that double teamed off of her, cuts in that same lane, that pulls over Aaliyah Boston from the porch in front of the rim, opens up Kamilla for a bucket. Like those little moments like that, and then obviously the steal ahead of anything else. Those little moments really matter. And she has a knack for making impactful plays. As long as she's able to not get in foul trouble, which is something that she struggled with over the course of the season, but today she was certainly composed in that. And again, the value that she brings and being able to serve in multiple different roles, there's a level of dynamism that comes with the player that can come off of the bench in a reserve role and always play to the needs of the team the way that the game is calling for, rather than saying, no, I'm only going to come in and score, or I'm only going to come in and play defense. She can do all of these different things, wear multiple hats over the course of her minutes, to the extent that she's also closed like maybe 3 or 4 games this season as well.
And that's what you're going to see. I think Kamilla Cardoso has established herself as somebody who, depending on how the team likes to balance, could be the early person off the bench or, in the starting lineup some games, because it always puts the opponent on the back foot. There's just very few guards in this league who can stick with her one-on-one. And so you're going to see Kamilla Cardoso have an impact all season long. That's about going to do it for our show today. We appreciate all of you coming on. The next Sky game is next Thursday night in D.C., which your boy will hopefully be at one way, shape, or form. I don't believe we'll have another post-game pod for that day, but always check us out online on CHGO_Sky. That's CHGO_SKY. The man, the myth, the legend, Stephen Pridgeon Garner is online at Stay True S. and the number 3. He is on with Erica Lee Day at PHNX_Mercury as well. The Mercury have some soul searching to do after a difficult loss to Minnesota, as do the Skies we've been talking about. And you can catch Stephen's work at allchgo.com. He's got a lot more film breakdowns. Follow him on Twitter for his last film session on Elizabeth Williams and her defensive acumen and prowess for the Sky. Thanks for everybody who joined us in the comments today. We appreciate you coming on. We hope to see you again the next time we get the show up. Thanks, as always, to our man on the wheels of steel, Joey Spathis, Il Padrino in the comments, Kevin K-Duck, and the best producer this side of Mars, Lawrence Benedetto, who came in the comment section as well. It's been great, y'all. I'm Chris Pennant. He's Stephen Garner. This has been the CHGO Sky Postgame Podcast. Until next time, folks, be good, do great things, and keep your head above the clouds.